Hello everyone, and a warm welcome from our side. We are very excited about this event, and I hope everyone will have the chance to learn something new or maybe to clarify some uncertainties. I'm Julian Mitra, and I'm the QA manager from Centric, and I work here for almost 2 years. Together with my colleague Brundusha, we will host this event. And because, we cannot have a host if there is no guest, well, on this matter, we are very honored to have the guest that is joining us tonight. We will be together for the next 2 hours, and because we know how important it is for some of you to find answers to your challenges, we have allocated enough time for the Q&A session. Please write your questions in the chat area, and after the presentation is done, our guest is more than happy to provide his input. This event is delivered by Centric, and if you're wondering who is Centric, I can say that Centric it is a Dutch company with headquarters in 7 European countries. We have more than 4,000 professionals that are creating the company products and also deliver outsourced products. We say about ourselves that we know a thing or two about creating software products. Some of the areas where Centric products can be found are mainly the Dutch public sector, supply chain, HR and payroll, infrastructure, and XR. In Romania, in Iași, Centric has one of the research and development offices where more than 300 experts are building the tools for our customers. On the testing side, we have a big group of colleagues that are focused in delivering the most exigent requests from our customers. The quality assurance discipline in Centric covers areas like education, test process and innovation, technical guidance, and also career growth. We assure the quality of web, desktop, and also mobile application by using various tools and technologies. Also, we covered the expected performance of our products and we are trying to dismiss any security breach. But yeah, I can talk about this a lot. I'll stop here because I know Brundusha, my colleague, has more interesting information to share with you. Brundusha, please do the honors.
Hello. So, like Julian said, my name is Brundusha Gamaneață, and I'm working with Centric, even if I don't have the same Centric background as Julian. So sorry about that. I work with Centric for almost 4 years now. But enough about me. We are very happy to introduce our guest, Richard Bradshaw, aka the Friendly Tester, and boss at Ministry of Testing. And I would also like to add something you may not know about him. He loves Indian food. Sorry about that, Richard. I'm telling you your secret. And he's an enthusiastic tester, teacher, writer, and public speaker. Within his talks, he always strives to emphasize the need of testing and quality while adapting the test approach and tools to each context, and by using the full benefits of a good design automation solution. So let's discover the future of testing together with Richard Bradshaw. So, Richard, the stage is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you for the introduction. Let's have a quick test. Screen shared, I believe. Hopefully you can see that. Should be a picture of a crystal ball. Is that the case? Yes?
Yes.
No? Yeah?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So, as introduced, thank you. I do love Indian food. It is by far my favorite. When I can, I try and cook. Cooking is my escape. I hope everyone at this moment in time has an escape because the world is a pretty tough place right now. So for me, getting into the kitchen, cooking anything, but yeah, if I have if I have the time and the energy, cooking some Indian food is my preference. Chicken pakora, probably top of the list if we're going to do some home cooking. And yeah, thank you for the kind introduction. So Centric asked me to talk about the future of testing, and I was like, the future? But that's just going to be opinions. You just want my opinions. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. It's like, you want me to talk about my opinions on a conference talk? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, absolutely fantastic. Who wouldn't want to talk about their opinions? So that's the caveat at the same time. This is my opinion. This is not factual information, okay? Don't take what I say as gospel. I'm sharing my views, I'm sharing my opinions, my observations, but what I say is not necessarily right. It's just potentially, at this moment in time, how I view the world. Tomorrow, I might wake up and have completely different views. But today, these are my views for today. So yeah, we're going to have a look into a crystal ball, and we're going to have a look framing this around the future of testing. So my first thing I wanted to highlight is we don't really know what the future holds. I don't think any of us thought we'd be in this future a year ago. I don't think anyone considered that, but here we are, and we adapt and we change. So, that's one thing that's really imperative to take away, is we will always change and adapt. But what I wanted to highlight is I'm talking about the future of testing. I'm not necessarily talking about the future of testers. They are not the same thing. Testers do a lot of testing. Testers also do a hell of a lot of other stuff, which we'll discuss. Developers do a lot of testing, and they also do a lot of other stuff. Product owners do a lot of things around the product, but they also do testing. So I'm talking about the future of testing, not necessarily the future of a specific role, but we're going to talk a little bit more about roles because things get a little bit fluffy, and we don't really want them to. So I thought, instead of thinking about the future, what if we had a look at the past? So what's actually happened in the past, and how have we got to where we are within testing? And I put QA up there, even though it looks like an advert for a company, the way I've chosen that. I don't mean that, I mean it as in quality assurance. So that's kind of where we started. And I don't know your context, but in my context in the UK, we don't hear quality assurance as much as we used to. We don't see quality assurance jobs. We see testing jobs. We see software developers and test. We see lots of different things, but we very rarely now see quality assurance in the UK market anyway. And I think that's a positive thing. I think that's a good thing about going forward, is we are no longer viewed as the gatekeepers. Testing in the past, we used to be the ones stood in front of the gate. Thou shalt not release. I say no. We don't do that anymore. You might do, but I don't. Instead, what we do is we share our findings, we share our insights. We're more about information gatherers than gatekeepers. We're part of the team. We're people gathering information, saying, look, here's what I discovered. Here's what's interesting to me. Here's what I didn't do. But if you still want to release, please release. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, my very first job in testing, I was on the regression testing team. We had a whole team for regression, and I was on that team, and we got to say whether it shipped or not. We weren't involved in all the work that went on earlier. We got given a CD, which had the banking software on it. We would install it, and we would do our regression testing, and we would decide if that would be released or not. And I'm quite happy that we're not in that world anymore. So I think the important thing to take from the past is that we're a bit more involved in the team now. We're not gatekeepers. We're not a step. We're not a part of the. We're not a part of the whole flow. It's getting more continuous, and it's happening all at the same time. We're not having these little periods of testing. Sorry, different stages. We still have different periods of testing, obviously, but we don't have these like dev, test, back to dev, back to test again. It's more continuous than a staggered waterfall-esque approach. So yeah, my first takeaway for the future is I'm very glad that we're not considered quality assurance anymore. I can't assure the quality of anything. If I make you a chicken tikka masala, I can't assure the quality of it. I'll tell you that I've done my best. I can show you the ingredients I've used. I can show you the process I went through. But when I taste it, I can tell you it's delicious. Like it's the best curry you've ever had, because that's what I'm going to think. But the moment you try it, you might disagree. And that's why I'm so glad we're not in that space anymore. We test, we experiment, we gather information, but we don't assure, because it's impossible. There's too many complexities, which we'll discuss. So just to make sure I don't miss any certain points, I'm really glad that we're not siloed. I remember being siloed as a tester. You know, I was only involved when I was meant to be, you know, when they decided I should have been involved, whereas now I'm involved all the time, which is fantastic. I get to contribute my great skill set that I have, my critical thinking, my lateral thinking, my modeling, communication skills. I get to be involved as early as possible with a lot of those things, which is awesome. This is highly debatable and rubs people the wrong way, but I don't have to write test cases anymore. I don't have to spend weeks writing test cases that no one ever reads, because we've moved on from that. We've realized it's not a good use of our time. I still think about the testing I want to do. I still document, but I don't have to write down these really granular step-by-step instructions, because it's not being ran by anyone. It's being ran by a skilled tester. I don't need to give a skilled tester or a skilled developer or someone doing testing step-by-step instructions. I just need to tell them what to look at, what to do, because they've got the skills. The past, silver bullet automation. Now, it's a bit debatable putting this in the past, because I get emails every week promising me silver bullet automation. But what I mean by this is this promise that we had as an industry 10, 15 years ago that automation was going to solve all our problems. 10, 15 years ago, we were told that automation would eradicate testers. It's not the case, and it will never be the case, as we'll discuss. If that is the case, it's taken them a very long time to do it. I'm still here. You're still here. You know, when are they eventually going to catch up to us? It's not going to happen. But that's what we were kind of promised. We were told that we were low skill. Testing used to be viewed as a low skill job. I don't think that's true. I think it's highly skilled, but we'll come to that. But that's what used to be discussed in the past. Anyone can test. Anyone can be a tester. You don't need degrees to be testers. People used to talk about testing as a way in to software development. I know lots of testers in the past who took testing jobs to become developers. And again, it's not a bad thing, but it was because testing was seen as not as highly skilled. It's not true. It's highly skilled. So, however, though, if you dig deeper and you read the books and you listen to the experts, or well, not the experts, the vocal people at the time, testing has always been highly skilled. There's always been a bunch of testers doing incredible work. Jerry Weinberg is one of my people I look up to, and he created the first test team for, I think, the Mercury space project. They were doing incredibly highly skilled work. They were doing elaborate and really deep exploratory based testing. Everything was about people. It was about human-centric testing, people being at the center. And they were doing really valuable testing. So even when you look at the past, no one really agrees on what was happening. So when we look to the future, as you're about to see, it gets even more chaotic. But let's have a start by looking at job titles. So in a lot of places, your job title kind of dictates what you do. And within testing, we have loads of job titles. So you can be a tester, junior tester, a software developer in test, a software engineer in test, an automation engineer, a senior engineer, a very, very senior automation engineer, a test manager, a test director, a test jumper, a principal tester, tester face, test lead, test leads of all the other leads. There is so many job titles. And what we're seeing is a bit of a not craze isn't the right word. What we are seeing in the future is the role of a tester, as in the title, seems to be changing. So we are starting to see potentially less testing jobs. We're starting to see people, I'm not a tester, I'm an automation engineer. So we're starting to see people go down that route. I'm not a tester, I'm a security tester, I'm a performance tester. We're starting to see a lot more niche job titles. But the reason why I'm bringing this one up in particular is because a role doesn't exist, doesn't mean that the activity doesn't exist. So if you don't have any testers on your team, that doesn't mean that no testing is taking place. There's always the activities. So the activities are very different than the roles. And roles vary everywhere. Roles are usually quite ingrained in a company, and new job titles very rarely come out. There's usually historical reasons about who a manager is and what you need to be a manager and what you need to be a lead. There's usually rules in place. So what I'm getting at is, going forward, job titles, meh, who cares? Call me whatever you want. I don't care what you call me. What I do care about is the activities that I'll be doing. I care about the roles. At Ministry of Testing, where I work, everyone's called a boss. Every job title is a boss. So we have social boss, money boss, dev boss, tech boss. And then what do you call the person at the top? So I get called boss because you can't think of titles, but the titles don't matter. What those people do and what they contribute matters. So in terms of the future of testers, yes, they might be less roles with the word tester in it, but it doesn't mean that testing isn't happening. So what I would say to these people who are worried that that's going down that route is focus on your skills. Make sure you understand to you what being a tester means. So when you say I'm a tester, what do you actually mean? That you're great at exploring a product, great at communicating, great at sharing information? The future of testing isn't going anywhere. There's going to be more testing. There's going to be a hell of a lot more testing taking place. And who does that testing might change, but it's always going to happen. So if you're right now at this moment in time, if you're an incredible tester, you are always going to get a job being an incredible tester. You might not be called a tester, but you will always get a role. There will be roles for people who can do excellent testing. You might have to do a few additional things, which we'll get to, but there will always be a role for skilled testing because the world is complex and it's getting more complex and we need skilled people. So focus on the roles, on the actual activities, not necessarily the job titles, because they're always going to change, right? Whenever a new cool company comes up, they'll call their thing someone else, and then that cool company will copy. But really, under the hood, people are doing the same jobs. So yeah, in the future, or even now, everybody tests. Everybody tests. And you might not believe it in your current company, but I can promise you everybody tests. Got a lot of developer friends. I've got developer friends who tell me they don't test. So I worked with a developer who said this. So being Mr. Creepy, I stood next to him for about an hour. He noticed after about 45 minutes, but I stood there quietly for an hour, just watching what he was doing. And every time I thought he was doing some testing, I said, "Are you testing?" He's like, "No, I'm not testing. No, I'm developing." I was like, okay. I keep watching and I see him do something else. Like, "Oh, you're testing again?" He goes, No, I'm debugging. I'm debugging, Richard. I'm not testing. I'm debugging." I was like, "No, look, you're testing." And then we had this discussion that he's gathering information. I'm gathering information. So he's testing just as much as I am. He was testing like I am, but slightly differently. And this is the thing with it. Testing is not the responsibility of testers. Testers do a lot more testing than other people, other roles, but every role does some element of testing, and that's only going to increase in the future. You will see a lot more roles doing more testing, and it's because the world is becoming more complex that we need to do what we class as testing. So my first piece of advice for you in the future is make sure you understand what testing means to you. Testing to me is gathering information that I think is valuable to other people. So if you can do that, other people will always be doing that too. But the good thing about having a specific role as a tester, and projects will have them, many projects will have dedicated roles for testers, is when you have that role, that person gets more freedom and time to do deep testing, to do more elaborate testing, to focus all their energy on testing, whereas the developer has to write the product and test. She has to be able to be comfortable with new technology and still do a bit of testing. Product owners have to be better and more skilled at story mapping and writing good features and planning sessions, but they will still do an element of testing. So it depends on the context what roles exist, but there will always be a need for fantastic testing. And the reason why I keep mentioning the word complexity is, have you noticed recently that software is everywhere? Like, I mean, everywhere. There's a fantastic, oh God, his name's gone out of me. I can't remember his name, something Hanley. But anyway, he takes pictures whenever you see blue screens out in the wild. And whenever he's going out and about, you see a ticket machine with a blue screen, he takes a picture. You see big billboards with blue screens, he takes pictures. But if you actually take a step back and look at where we've come in even just the last 15 years of my career, software is so more ingrained into our lives. Like one of my friends on Twitter bought a smart fridge the other day. A smart fridge. Why does my fridge need to be smart? Right? And then they've got a smart toaster. My partner's brother just bought a smart oven so he can turn the oven on his way home, so it's preheated when he gets home. No, it's why did someone do that? I've got friends who have smart pet feeders, so they can tell their pet feeder to give the cat some food. Software is everywhere. One of the great examples I love from this is a company called Rolls-Royce, who make engines for Boeing, and Rolls-Royce got asked to create an engine that could have 18,000 pounds of thrust. So they did. But what they actually did was they made an engine with 20,000 pounds worth of thrust and then limited it with software. Because they know that in a few years' time, Boeing are going to come along and say, can I have an engine with 20,000 pounds worth of thrust? And Rolls-Royce are going to go, I've already got one. But think of our other lives. Think of what's happening right now with COVID. And how complex software can be. I'm going to take the mick out of my own country. Did you see yesterday in the news that we had missed results from our COVID positive tests because we were using Excel and we ran out of rows? Excel! We were using Excel to keep track of a whole country's COVID statuses. It is utter madness. But back to where I started, the reason why there's going to be a lot more testing in the future is because there's a lot more software. There is a hell of a lot more software in the world, and it is only going to increase. There is still industries that don't have as much software as they can. Agriculture is one of them. There's some incredible work being done in agriculture, but as a whole, there isn't an awful lot of software there. But yeah, rambling on, but software is becoming more and more prevalent in our lives. It is taking over. I bank in the UK with a company called Monzo. There is no branches for Monzo. You can't go to the branch. You can't go into a bank. You have to use the app. And we're starting to, it depends on the age group, but we're starting to become so used to having software that it's changing our world, and it's going to continue to change our world because it's so crucial to the future. But the complexity varies, and this is why we're talking about the future of testing. The complexity varies. You can build products now without writing any code. You can literally download frameworks and you can build products. You can build workflows, robot process automation without having to write any code. You can have products that are built from scratch, from the ground up. You can have products that are deployed to a phone, products deployed to a watch, products deployed to the mythical cloud that's floating around. The complexity varies massively now. 10, 15 years ago, we wrote everything from scratch, or probably even longer than that. But most of the software was written new, whereas now we're downloading libraries off the website, off the internet. You just download something from NPM, from NuGet, and you stick it into your product. And this is why the complexity varies. Some are in domains that are very specific. You need a high level of knowledge of that domain to be able to function in there. So therefore, you probably benefit from having a dedicated tester or a dedicated person's focus on testing. Again, whenever I say tester, correct it in your head to someone who tests. But yeah, so some projects are going to need more testing than others. So therefore, certain domains, certain different types of complexity within the software, they're going to need different people. And that's where the future of testing changes and what roles we have. Some products don't need a dedicated tester. Testing's still happening, but they don't need one. Some products need multiple dedicated testers. Some projects need a tester who just comes in and helps the other people test, coaches them, trains them, and then leaves again. It's always going to depend on the context, but there will always be testing. However, I didn't want to just be a bit floaty. I wanted to really dig into the future. So I'm a tester. I'm a technical tester. I have very high technical skills, and I can also code. I learned to code at university, and that puts me in a certain bracket. That puts me in a certain box for some companies. Richard is this kind of tester. Now, if Richard couldn't code, Richard would be this kind of tester. Now, if Richard couldn't code, he didn't have any technical skills, I would be this kind of tester. However, underneath the hood, I still need a solid foundation of testing know-how. There's always testing know-how needed. But sorry, what we're getting at here is there's been this huge surge that testers need to code, and it's been around for ages. It hasn't gone away. There's still testers everywhere who don't code. However, I do think there's a vast difference between being technical and knowing how to code. Where we're going with software and how complex it's become and how everywhere it is, you do need to be technical. And I'm going to try and elaborate what I mean by that. You need to understand how software works. You need to understand how the internet works, how APIs work. You need to understand the cloud. You need to understand how code can hang together. But those are very different skills than writing the code yourself. Writing code involves firstly thinking of it, modeling it in your head, and then typing the actual keys. They are different skills. So I strongly advocate that anyone who wants a big future in software to become as technical as you can. And if you do have the capacity to learn to code, it will not harm you. That's one thing I would say about code. Not being technical, I believe, will harm your future career because software is becoming very, very complex. However, not being a coder, I think you'll still be fine. I still think there's roles out there. There will still be contexts and that require technical, skilled, exploratory-based testing. But however, there's also a big space going forward for people who can code, especially in the automation context, which we'll move on to. But I want to make it very clear to you, I do not advocate that every tester needs to learn to code, but you do need a technical mindset because that's the domain that we're in now. Software is complicated. So automation, yes, right. Every tester has to do automation, right? That's what we're told. Yeah, that's the future. Oh, sorry, hang on. No, I got that wrong, didn't I? Sorry, in the future, all the testing's done by automation. That's right, isn't it? That's what we're saying. Sorry, I always get those two confused. No, going forward, automation is going to play a bigger part in testing. Absolutely, but it's going to play a bigger part in everything. It's going to play a bigger part in software development, deployment. It's going to play a bigger part in the way we get requirements from customers. It's going to play a big part everywhere. But specifically for testing, we will rely on automation a lot more. However, automation just doesn't magically appear. An automation engineer just doesn't arrive in your team and boom, automation. Look at that, done, nailed it. It doesn't happen that way. To do really valuable automation, you need a strong testing mindset. And I predict in the future that we are on a very dangerous trajectory where we have a lot of automation engineers who do not know how to test. I hope that that trajectory changes. But at the moment, I've met and interviewed a lot of automation engineers who do not have a strong testing background. They don't understand risk. They don't know how to design tests. They are a wizard at the keyboard. They can write me automation in 25 languages and 500 frameworks. But when I talk to them about risk and value and what to test and what not to test, I don't get the response that I would want. So even if you are now a fantastic coder already, you need to also fine tune your testing skills to have a real future in our domain going forward. And here's some principles that we have for AIT. So I advocate that we create tools and automation that support testing. I don't believe that you can replicate what a human does. When you get a human to test and you say on a piece of paper, trying to think of an old test case now, fill in the username, fill in the password, click login, and verify you are logged in, right? When you give that to a tester, they do fill in the password, or anyone who's doing testing, they do fill in the password. They also check that the text box is nice, that it's clear, that it's well labeled, that it's in the right it's in a good place on the screen. When they do click login, they make sure that it's a smooth process, the UX is good, and that there isn't a big pink elephant on the screen. When you give that same script to a computer, it will only ever do what you told it to do. So your automated scripts are only ever as good as the person who created it. And if that person doesn't have strong testing skills, they're not going to be that great. So therefore, we have to have both these sets of skills. A few others in here. Again, I mentioned we advocate testing expertise over coding expertise. I do see that as the solid foundation for the future of anyone who wants to be a strong tester. You will need to have really strong testing expertise. You will need to have strong technical skills, and then as a bonus, coding skills. If you have all three of them, you are going to be valuable to any project. That is really going to be the case. But the first one for me, and the most important, is the strong testing expertise. And it's so much harder to teach strong testing expertise than it is coding skills. It really is crucial that you have them. Going forward, we're going to see a lot more emphasis on problems. So right now, our industry is obsessed with a lot of tools. We're tool mad. You always see tools listed on job adverts and on job descriptions. But we're going to start seeing problems going forward. Software is so varied now, the context is so different that teams are having different problems. So therefore, we're going to see a huge increase in the focus on the problem, not asking for this tool and that tool. We're going to see job adverts that state, this is our problem. Can you help us? Do you have the skills to help me solve this problem? So yeah, automation is of course going to be around, but also automation is going to change. Right now, we have a lot of people who are getting all the jobs, let's say, because they know Selenium or they know some sort of UI tool. That is going to come to an end because that automation, that level of automation has already been proven to not be that valuable. A lot of companies who went heavy into automation. So I'm going to recap actually, sorry. We had a period a few years ago where a lot of companies got rid of their exploratory testers or their manual testers, quotes, important bit there, manual testers, and they tried to replace them with automation. And there's loads of stories about this. Google is one of the big ones. And they automated themselves into a mess. Their quality nosedived. It nosedived because automation can't maintain itself. Automation is only as good as the person who wrote it. And we were doing so much on the UI and missing so much of the observations that a real tester makes that we ended up automating ourselves into a bit of a mess. So the thing I see changing massively in the future is any automation engineer, you will be expected to automate on all the layers of the system. So if you are an automation engineer and you want to really go down that path, you are going to be expected to be able to automate on the UI, the JavaScript layer, the visual layer, the API layer, and even unit test. You will not be able to, I don't think that you'll be able to continue just being a Selenium or a UI focused person. You're going to have to go down the stack. And the same can be said for the exploratory testers. You're going to be expected to test far more than just the UI. And that's what I mean by technical. You're going to be expected to interact with the APIs, read the code, do code reviews, talk to the database. And so many people are doing that already. But if you're not, you will be expected to do that. And this is like, again, it's a simple model, but it demonstrates that our systems are complex. There's so much going on at each layer. As testers in the future, we're going to need the skills to understand each layer. We're going to need to know what React's up to. We're going to need to know the database. We're going to need to know the API. Clicking through a UI is not going to be enough for the future. Sorry, covered that one. Actually, no, we'll repeat this. again, I want to reiterate this: the tester of the future, or the testing of the future, is going to be heavily problem focused. It's not going to be about tools. I really want to stress that. It's going to be about the problem. You're going to have the skills to understand the problem. I see testing very much becoming problem based all the time. So the speed that you can understand the domain and the context, you're going to need those skill sets to understand the problem quickly, dive into this massive bag of tools and techniques that you're going to need to know, and then help the team with a solution. It's going to be very team focused, problem focused roles and activities. So, okay, strong opinion time now. I apologize if I offend anyone, but education. In the future of testing, the education has to change. Our education right now is very certification focused, and that is not going to be enough to succeed in the future. Having all these badges on your chest from ISTQB or whoever the hell's giving you these badges is not going to be enough. That shows that you're capable of listening for 3 days and that you're capable of passing an exam. That's good. Shows that you can learn, but it's not going to sustain you as a tester or as any role in software development. The future of testing means that you're going to have to be continuously learning. You are going to need to have access to wider communities. Come to events like this, go to meetups, read newsletters, join online conferences, go to physical conferences, read books, read tech radar reports. You are going to have to submerge yourself in as much information as possible. And I want to make one thing clear. I'm not saying that you have to do more at home, because that's what a lot of people think when you say these things. I'm not saying that you need to spend your weekends reading all this stuff in your evenings doing all this stuff, but you're going to have to make time for it, because the pace that our industry is moving at, certifications are already out of date, right? They're out of date already. So you're going to need to keep yourself educated. So I strongly, and this isn't just because I work at MOT, not at all. You're going to have your own information radiators. You're going to have your own funnels of information. You're going to have to be willing to learn, because we're going to move quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. So the future really is education. You need the latest skills and you need them quick. You need to teach yourself how to learn. It sounds ridiculous, but knowing how to learn is going to be one of the most important skills for anyone in software going forward. So really make sure you know how you like to learn, but education is going to be massive. I see a lot more companies going to be focusing on this, investing a lot more time and energy in this just to keep up, because, as I said, the pace of our industry is accelerating. And you could even see it more so due to COVID. A lot of sectors that didn't have a lot of software, they've been hit really hard because of COVID. And where the sectors that already had technology, they've been able to ride the wave a little bit better than some of the others. So yeah, education is going to be important. All right, I saved this till the end, and I imagine everyone's sat there going, when's Richie going to talk about AI? I am going to talk about AI, and I'm going to talk about AI from two angles. Firstly, the future of testing. If you have AI in your product, and I'm using AI as an umbrella term, if you're more advanced in it than me, change it to machine learning, change it to smart algorithms. There's so many underlying things of AI. I'm just going to use the umbrella term for now, because I think most of you know what I mean when I say AI. But if you have AI in your products, that is going to be very hard to automate, right? So if the future of testing has been automation, as we've previously been told, how are you going to automate something that changes its behavior every millisecond? Every time it learns something new, it's going to change its behavior. It's going to be very hard for you to do traditional automated tests with that. You can still automate, of course, but it's going to be hard to do this current approach to automation that we have, which is do A and B and check that you get C. We're going to have to build more tools that give us information that then gets analyzed by a skilled human. Now, what role do you know where a skilled human analyzes data? Oh, it's a manual tester. So the skills start to come back. And this is really interesting for me from the future of testing, that when you have something like AI in your product that's unpredictable and can do different things, you're going to need a skilled human who understands critical thinking, understands modeling, and understands how to analyze data. And you could call them a data scientist, you could call them a tester. It doesn't really matter what you call them. The skills are the same. So products with AI in are going to be a fascinating challenge for us to test. I can't wait till we have a lot more products within there, but it also brings interesting problems. It brings the social problem. We've seen, I mentioned this in the training we did earlier with Centric today, but we mentioned that the bot that Microsoft released many years ago now, and how it went mental by the end of the day. By the end of the day, it's spouting terrible, terrible things. And at the start of the day, it was like a little child. You're going to have to be in software developed that agrees with that. There was a ticketing system in the UK that sold train tickets, and its algorithm got really confused because I can't remember the exact time. I think it was 5 o'clock. It had a traffic-based price. So what happens at 5 o'clock? Of course, everyone buys their train tickets to go home. So the algorithm started putting the price up at 5 o'clock because it thought that there was more customers, which obviously caused outrage because that's the peak time. People shouldn't be paying more as such. So yeah, there's a fascinating side of products having AI that we're going to need to be able to tweak and improve our skills. And it is exciting. It's terrifying, absolutely terrifying, but exciting at the same time. Now, the other side of the coin is using AI to help us test. And I think this is really interesting space. There is some fantastic work being done in this, but it's being done in the wrong place. And it makes me so sad. If I had enough money, I would create a company that built testing tools, used AI to build the testing tools we need. But we're currently trying to solve the wrong problem. So a lot of the AI-based tooling that we have now is focused on fixing the automation problem. So it's focused on having automated scripts that heal themselves, that go off and do all sorts of different types of testing, when really we need AI tools that assist humans, give me the right data at a rapid pace, allow me to design tests, allow me to digest all this information from GitHub, from Jira, from production, from logs, from monitoring, takes all that information and gives it to me in a digestible way. That's what we need. However, what we do have and what's being promised to us is this AI is going to replace testers. And here's the fun thing about AI. AI is based on someone's model. That's how AI works, right? There's a model. And if you go and talk to people and ask them how they test, very few people can tell you how they test because we don't understand ourselves yet. So to train a model to test is going to take time. It is going to take a long time. It is not going to be here anytime soon. However, what we will have is AI tools that support testing. So I expect us to see a load of tools in the coming years that, go to every page on the website and check for JavaScript errors. Go to every page in the website and take screenshots. Fill in forms based on the label. They're not going to know what the form is, but they're going to know that you want an address and that you want a name. They're going to be able to fill these things in, and they're going to be able to navigate around our applications, but they're not going to know the context. So I expect us to see a lot of tools that go off and do things and then give us the information back so that humans then digest it. Already starting to see a load of that. But this promise that AI can automate our testing is absolute nonsense. I don't see it happening anytime soon, or if at all, because it's so complex. But I do see tools utilizing neural networks and AI and machine learning and all that fancy stuff to assist us, to make our lives easier. And there's a few companies doing it well already. Test.ai with Jason, they're doing really fantastic stuff. He's been able to create bots that go off and just play games. They don't know what they're playing. They're just playing and learning, but he is able to observe what they're doing and get insight from that. There's a few automation-based tools that have already gone ahead and been basically they're advanced spiders. But you can't ignore the technologies. So I've picked out AI, but that's just one of many. There's a whole host of technologies that are going to disrupt the world of software, but they're going to disrupt the software that you build and you test, and they're also going to disrupt how you go about testing it, how you go about interacting with your products. A simple Selenium script is not going to be the tooling of the future. The tooling of the future is going to be many, many tools. Some that use AI, some that are purely done by humans, some that are completely based on the human, just using it to get information out of it. But there is going to be a surge of new tooling coming into the world of testing. And I want to repeat, they're going to be technical, but you're not going to need to know how to code to use some of them. Some of them you will. But yeah, AI is absolutely on its way, but it's not mature enough yet. The testing space isn't mature enough. The software development space isn't mature enough to take full advantage of it. But eventually, I do feel we will get there. So yeah, a bit floaty, a bit rambly. I want to highlight some of the key things just to make it clear for the Q&A. Testers aren't going anywhere. The role of testing is changing. Testing will always exist on products, but you might not need a dedicated tester to do it. It depends on the context. Some domains you will need loads of testers, some domains you will need none. Software is coming everywhere. There is going to be so many more software-based jobs in the future. Software is taking over the world. So there's going to be demand for anyone involved in the world of software. There is going to be new roles that harness all the skills of a tester, but they won't be called a tester. You'll be called something else, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to need those skill sets: critical thinking, modeling, communication, exploration. Those skills are always going to be needed, but titles are always going to change. We probably won't have developers in a few years. They'll be called something else. It doesn't matter though. The job title does not necessarily control what you do. If you're a skilled critical thinker, problem solver, quick learner, software is going to be there for you as a career for a very, very long time, no matter what your job title is. Hopefully you're all called bosses. Just everyone's called a boss. It doesn't matter what it is. Tooling is going to change. You are going to have to automate on many different layers. You are going to have to use a whole host of new tooling. Get used to it. Get used to quickly learning this tooling. Get used to feeling uncomfortable because software is shifting at such a pace. Education is going to change. You are going to have to expose yourself and keep learning. You will get left behind. I'm sorry to say it, if you do not embrace learning and progressing yourself and pushing yourself, you will find yourself not being able to get a role. Because one thing I didn't talk about is the amount of people coming into software. That's one thing to be aware of. People coming into software, they don't know any different. They're young, they've had software around them their whole lives. So there's a lot of people coming into software. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to say one more important thing. The next generation of software testers and programmers are the kids now. And how many of your kids at school are being taught how to code, are taught about software? It's being taught already. So when they come into our industry in 10, 15 years, they're going to have a certain set of skills. So you need those skills too. So yeah, future's exciting. Roles are going to change, titles are going to change, but software is going to be everywhere. So we're all going to have jobs, but they might be different. But you got to rapidly learn. And I'm excited for the future. I think software's possibilities are endless. Look at the crazy stuff. What was it? 2 hours ago, SpaceX landed another rocket on a barge floating in the Atlantic Ocean. Makes no sense. But they're able to do that, and the software plays a big part in that too. Anyway, I hope that was enjoyable. I don't want you all to leave. What I want to say is Q&A is the most important bit. Q&A is where you get to put me on the spot, you get to push me, you get to challenge me, you get to get your question answered. This was just 40 minutes of waffling opinion. Now it's time to have some fun with real Q&As and give you some value for your evening, and as I said, improve your education. So thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Thank you, Richard, for the nice sharing and also for your advices. You said the magic word education, and I guess this is important takeaway. And we have a lot of questions waiting for you. We have actually 19 questions.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
quick
a
fire.
lot of
Okay.
them. I will start with the first one from Alexandru. When did the necessity of testing was noticed? Who laid the foundations of testing?
I would say, tough question. If I look back at it, I would say society. So once testing became more ingrained into our lives, expectations increased. So, it was unacceptable. Once software started to risk the majority of people's lives, like your bank balance not being accurate, not being able to get money out of a cash machine, when it became so ingrained in everyone's day-to-day life, the expectation that it worked became really prevalent. And it's no different now, right? How many of you download an app and you spend 2 minutes with it? If it doesn't do what you want, you delete it, download another app. So it's based on people's expectations. So now we expect things to work. So therefore we have to have them see them working. And as software started creeping more and more into our lives, obviously before most of us were even born, software was creeping in. And now, as I said, software is everywhere. So I think it's all people. We expect it to work. And what I didn't say in that talk to emphasize this point is you can have a rival overnight now. It's become so much easier to build software or to spin up a company and get people, because there's more of us, that you can have competition overnight. So your product has to work. It has to work for you to keep your advantage in the business.
Thank you.
No worries.
Okay. So the next question. Questions are still coming in. So at this point, we have left like 18 questions, but yeah, depending on the time we have available, we can take more. The next question, Richard, do you think testing live production code is becoming a trend?
Do I think testing production code is becoming a trend?
Testing live production code.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no better testing environment than production, right? That's the one that we're all working towards to have our real customers using it. So yeah, I do. Testing in production is going to become more and more important, but I think you have to break down what that means. So having monitoring in production technically is testing in production, because you're getting real information from production. Logging on to production and doing stuff on there is challenging in certain domains because obviously that data goes places, but I do see an increased access to that. Also, it's never been the case, has it? We've always tried to make environments look like production, but it's never the same. So when you get real, you actually get access to production, you are genuinely testing the real thing. You're not testing a staging environment that has 20 machines less than the real one. There's real data in production. Data can be a very tricky thing to set up. So if you do have access to production, there's real data there. But I think just the concept of being more aware of what our production systems are doing will only ever increase. I think we have to be able to see them in real time. We have to be able to understand what they're doing. We have to be able to see errors before they happen. I've got a short story where I worked at one company and the reception desk had screens all behind it full of dashboards. It was all meant to be cool and trendy and look like fun, but they were real dashboards. And I remember a marketing lady came in who was visiting the company, and she pointed at the graph and she was like, your graph is broken. And the receptionist was like, you what? She's like, your graph, it's broken. And basically the graph was going, the graph was like this, and then all of a sudden it was going like that. And she was like, your graph, it's broken. Anyway, one of us noticed and one of our APIs had crashed and it was just rocketing in 404s. And that lady spotted it before we did. So I think there's when we talk about testing in production, I think being able to see what's happening, being alerted to it, being able to debug in production, absolutely. Why would you try and replicate it when you have access to the real thing? I see more and more of that happening. I see a lot more tooling in that space. The observability space, fantastic lady called Charity Mayers. She's doing some fantastic work in the space of observability, with the high level idea being able to observe your system in real time. It's a very exciting space if you want to deep dive into a topic. Thank you.
We have an interesting question from Marian. What's your advice for a junior tester?
As per the talk, I would say the critical thinking side of testing, the analytical side, the understanding context and the designing good tests, that skill set never really changes. So being able to quickly understand a domain and a product and the information being given to you by stakeholders to design, to even think of a test, that doesn't change. You can give a skilled tester anything and say, test this, and they'll come up with ideas. So that is always the first step. So I would say you really need to hone your critical thinking skills. You need to be very good at understanding the problem. You need to be very good at understanding context. And then after that, you start to dig into the world of tools. So that would be my first advice. My second advice would be, as I mentioned, about being technical. And I would also say if you are at the junior stage, coding probably is a good avenue to go down if you have desires to do that. That being said, building up a good portfolio of tool knowledge. So in some of my automation training, we talk about being tool aware. I would massively encourage a junior tester or any tester to make sure you're aware of the tooling that's available. Because once you've identified the problem and you see that the problem looks like an orange, you don't want to go into your toolbox and see just bananas. That's not going to help you. You want to have many things in your toolbox that are going to allow you to go about solving this problem. So nail your testing skills, invest in solid testing understanding, and then look at your tool side of things, and not necessarily coding based tools all the time, but tools that assist you testing, and then potentially code as well is not going to hurt you. But if you don't know how to test, doesn't matter how many tools you know if you don't know what problem you're trying to solve. It's wasted. You've got to be able to understand what you're trying to do and what problem you need to solve, what problem your customers and stakeholders want to solve, and then you utilize your tools and your knowledge. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Some nice advices for the people who are starting in the testing side. So moving on, the next questions comes from Jonas. Should we expect more companies adopting cloud technologies in spite of the challenges in keeping your data secure and private?
Yeah, and the reason why is, I know this sounds like crazy, but if you give that problem to the likes of Amazon, to Google, to Microsoft, these, I don't know, let's make up this 15. You give that problem to these 15 cloud providers and you say, solve the problem of data security. That's your problem. They're going to potentially come up with a much better solution than your team of 10. With your team of 10 with a limited budget and limited experience, you're going to come up with a good solution, but you are not going to come up with as good a solution as someone else. So it's this passing down of responsibilities. Not every company is going to have a data expert, a security expert. So let Amazon solve that problem, let Google solve that problem, let Microsoft solve that problem, and then have people learn their solutions for it. Obviously, they're not always going to get it right, but as a company trying to keep up with all these protocols, all these hacks, all these attacks, and trying to protect yourself, that's going to be a lot of work and a lot of skills and a lot of money, whereas this company's doing it already. That being said, it could change. I personally think the way I do stuff now, we do everything in the cloud because I'd rather delegate that problem solving to somebody else than invest a load of money trying to do it myself. But there is certain domains that I've seen that are going back to their own hardware. They are going back to data centers because they don't trust some of these things, some of these providers. But personally, I would go down the cloud route and delegate all this know-how to somebody else. I think it's cheaper, more advanced. You get access to a lot more technology than you could get yourself quickly. But other people might disagree. But yeah, cloud all the way for me at the moment in time.
Thank you, Richard. So we next have a very complex question, and it's about test cases. So usually in old and complex projects, we have a lot of test cases, and those test cases actually act like a documentation. And the question here is, how do you see the test cases evolving in time? Do you see a future for test cases?
No, I don't see a future for test cases. However, I do see a future for documentation to some different degrees. So you take a traditional test case as they currently have. There's a title, description, there's loads of steps, and there's an expected result. Now, if you give a test case to any tester, no tester I've ever met just does what's on that test case. Every single tester does more. Like, it tells you just to check that the text is on the screen. Every tester does that, but they also check that it's a nice font, it's the right color. There isn't 2 texts on the screen. There isn't 5 texts on the screen. There isn't 1 letter over here and 4 letters over there. They might not know they do it, but they do it. So when you take test cases in their traditional form, they don't serve the purpose that people think they do. So if I need testing in a certain area, then I can use things like exploratory-based charters. I can guide people into an area. I can say, I want you to look at this part of the application with your security hat on, with your user experience hat on, with your data hat on. I can guide you and I can trust that you have the skills to do that. If there's very important test cases that have to be ran, automate them. Because if all you want me to do is follow a test case, you don't need me to do that. I'm a skilled, highly expensive tester who can do incredible things. Why do you want me to follow the instructions in a test case? Delegate that to a computer, automate it. It's a waste of my time. It's not challenging for me, it's boring. Automate it. Now, if there is certain procedures that need to be ran in a very specific order, then of course document it. But it doesn't have to be a test case. It can just be a cheat sheet. It can be a flow diagram. It can be a checklist. I don't need to be spoon-fed. I'm not stupid. I'm a skilled human. I just need to be guided. And sometimes I need strict instructions. Other times I don't. But if it is a strict set test case that has to be ran every time for whatever reason, automate it. So I don't see a future for test cases, but I do see a combination of automated checks. I see a combination of checklist. I see mind maps full of valuable information that we don't want to forget. I see a future of flow diagrams. So there's definitely going to be documentation, but test cases have too much negative connotation tied to them. So I don't see a future for test cases, but I see what I do expect to see is people taking these test cases and taking them apart one by one. If you want living documentation, which is what a lot of people describe, you don't need to invest so much in like test cases. You don't need to write 50 steps for having living documentation. You can use automation. You could use Gherkin, BDD kind of angle if you wanted to. If you want to solve the problem of living documentation, solve the problem of living documentation. Test cases aren't the solution to that. There's many tools designed to solve that problem. So yeah, I don't see a future for test cases. I don't like them. They scar me. They upset me. There's many better ways to do it. So I would go down that route, and I would trust the humans. That's one thing that a lot of companies who still embrace testing, trust your humans. And if I would say, here's an experiment for you if you want it. If you think that testers only run test cases, watch a tester follow a test case. And every single time they do something that's not in that test case, poke them in the arm. Well, when it's socially distanced, use a stick so you're not stood next to them. But call them out. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Whenever they do something that isn't in the test case, they're using their brain, and you should embrace that. You shouldn't be confining them and restricting them to what the test case says. Computers are brilliant at that. Computers will only ever do what you tell them. Humans never do what you tell them. Mischievous people, right? They never do what you ask. Just do what I tell you and nothing more. They will never do that. Computers will. So take your test case, split them up into where the category they fall in, and take advantage of modern approaches and do them differently. That would be my advice.
Thank you, Richard. Quite interesting perspective about how we should look over the test cases. I really loved test cases until Kirking appeared. So yeah, things are evolving also on this side. Thanks a lot. The next question, actually, I've tried to combine two questions because they are kind of similar and they are referring to the expertise a tester should have. So I'll try to combine them. You said that everyone is testing. How can we evaluate ourselves if we have the necessary skills to be a very good tester? What is the main skill of a tester? What skill makes the difference between, and I guess this is the core of the question, what skills make the difference between a good tester and the usual tester? What is the ideal software tester experience in 2020?
Oh, how long do we have? The list would be too long, I would say. Firstly, to answer the first question, how do you know that you're a good tester? Most testers, if the specific role of a tester, your job is to gather information. So that's my definition. The purpose of testing is to gather information that allows stakeholders to make decisions. So are you enabling your stakeholders to make decisions? If that's the case, then you're a very good tester. Are you doing it as quickly as they would like? Very good tester. Is it taking too long? You could be a better tester. Now, in terms of the specific skill sets, and Brandusha's gone blue, but in terms of the specific skill sets, as I mentioned before, critical thinking is a must. You have to, as a tester, you're always trying to think of what if, why? Well, like annoying children, why? Even when things work, I'm still going, why? Why does it work? I don't accept that it works. So that is certainly the skills that you go down. So critical thinking. But then I would say after that is where we kind of went wrong as an industry. So there's a lot of snake oil around automation, and there's a lot of stupid tool vendor websites that say, you know, we can speed up your testing by 80,000 jillion%. And they believe that because, funny enough, because of the previous question, because of test cases. So 10, 15 years ago, testers would run test cases and they would tick the box. Pass. Fail. Here's a bug. Pass. And then at the end of the day, you would go, I ran 45 test cases today. Yay, go Richard, woo! And then I'd go home, right? So of course, when automation started promising that it would automate our test cases, everyone bought into it because all we ever did was tell people that we ran test cases. We never told anyone anything else. We never told anyone when we went off test case. We never told anyone else when we did all our thinking to design the test case. We only ever spoke about the test cases. So I would say, to answer your question, is communication and storytelling. You have to be able to explain your work, to show your value. Yes, you found a bug, and that's a really great bug. But I'm also interested in to know, how did you get there? Why did you even run that test? Like, it's seen as a negative thing in some places. Like, what the hell? Why did you run that? And you ran it because your brain invented it. For whatever reason, your brain went, what would happen if you do that? Oh, I'm going to do it. So, as I said, the first thing is having the skills to go, what if I do that? The second set of skills is having the skills to even do the test. So you design it and then have the skills to implement it, but then you have to have the skills to talk about it. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be a good storyteller, because otherwise all this information you get is never going to be shared to its true value. So those are key skills. And then I always throw one more in just to add more complexity to the answer. More importantly, in recent years, is facilitation. I would say testers are usually at the center of a lot of things. We're talking to product owners, we're discussing stories, we're critiquing stories, we're trying to make sure the product owners, deeply done their side of the things. We're talking to developers who are trying to build the stories. We're talking to ourselves, in the test team. We're talking to ops engineers. We're talking to customers. You have to be a good facilitator to make sure all these people talk the same way. And it usually falls to a tester. It's an observation I made myself of my own career, that I tended to be the one who made everyone talk to each other. You'd usually get the nod from people. Oh, right, yeah, I understand what you want to build. And then I would go, yeah, but have you thought about this? And then the developer would be like, oh, no, I didn't think about that. Oh, no, this changes everything. Let's start again. And then we'd go in this cycle. But I was the one initiating that by being a good facilitator. And also, we tend to be the ones that need to be able to put all the information in the right buckets. So in order to do that, controlling the flow of conversation can be really valuable and remove a lot of repetition. A lot of teams waste so much time repeating stuff. Like Free Amigos was meant to solve a lot of this problem, but you still have product owners and customers talk to each other. The product owner tries to write that in a story. They never write down what the conversation was. They just write down what they think it was. They then communicate that to developers, who then think they know what they're meant to build, and then they build something completely different because it wasn't communicated very well to them. And then we come to test it and we're like, what the hell? Why have you built this? And then we go back and we end up going around in these loops. So if you can have that strong facilitation at the start, that's going to be a big help. So yeah, critical thinking, being able to come up with test ideas, being able to execute them is a huge tool, technical know-how side of things, but communication and facilitation. You can be the best tester in the world, but if you can't tell me what you did, why does it matter? You have to be able to tell me. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. So you said about the Free Amigos, but what about the two amigos, the tester and the developer? We have a question here about their interaction. It seems that there are some developers that still think that the tester just tests the code. That's it. What should we do with this situation? How we should handle this?
There's a really interesting side for this. That the way I like to answer this question is, we tend to get criticized for finding bugs. Sometimes it's a positive, right? But if we find too many, well, obviously it's our fault. But it's basically developers create the bugs, so we find them. We don't create the bugs ourselves. We discover them. We find them. So it's really important that teams understand that. So when there is bugs, yes, we found them and that's great, but I've helped the developer here. So the developer needs to appreciate that you created that in the first place, and that's not ideal. That's waste. You didn't create it intentionally. They're not malicious. Although some developers are, but they're not malicious. They didn't sit there and go, going to create a bug today, and I hope Bradshaw doesn't find it. It's all right. They don't do that, right? No one does that. They don't intend to make these errors, but they happen because we're humans. So I have this conversation with developers and say, look, we're on the same team here. We're trying to build a quality product. I want you to write, great code first time round if we can. And I want to find different things, edge cases. It's really frustrating as a tester when you find stupid bugs, things that should never have got there. That is not fun for a tester. I want to be challenged. I want to be sad when I can't find a bug. But when I can't find a bug, it's also very important to tell the developer that they've done an awesome job. That's one thing that a lot of test dev relationships fall down in. We only ever communicate in bugs, and most bugs have a negative connotation to them. So when you do test a feature and it works well, go tell the developer that they've done an awesome job. When testers find bugs, the developers should be praising the testers because that stopped it going live. That stopped it being discovered by a customer. That stopped that customer being annoyed. That stopped that customer deleting your app. That's made that customer spend money. That's paid for your salary. So you have to understand that it's a team approach. And yes, sometimes I am negative because I find bugs, but that's kind of what I meant to do. But if you take the word bug out of it, it also becomes a very interesting conversation. So bug is negative to a lot of people. But if you say information, a bug is a category of information. If you say, I found this really interesting behavior with the product that, if you put £1 plus £1, it gives you £3, that's a bit odd, isn't it? And then they're likely to engage with you and go, that's really odd, Richard. Yeah, what? I don't understand why it's doing that. If you go, I found a bug, it doesn't work, it's broke, you broke it, look what you did. That's a completely different conversation. So we often talk about, what do they say? So, testers break things. That's another side of this argument. Like we get told that we break things all the time. We don't break it. It's already broken. It came to me broke, and I'm just showing you where it's broke. I didn't break it. I didn't write the code. I didn't dive in and do a load of commits. Some cases I do that, but in most of the cases, I'm highlighting where it's broken. And I'm not doing it to be horrible. I'm just highlighting that, look, we've made a mistake here. There's an opportunity to improve our application. So it's a fun thing. I told a story in the training that the friendly tester nickname came from a developer. I paired with a developer to help them debug. The developer thought I was a stupid tester who knew nothing. I knew Visual Studio. I knew how to attach the processes. I knew how to debug. I knew how to write code. We had a great conversation. And within 20 minutes, the bug was fixed and there was an automated test for it. And he called me the friendliest tester I've ever met. So it's the narrative of it is the important bit. They need to appreciate your skills. If you're only ever communicating in bugs, they're obviously not going to think that, they'll always associate you with a negative thing. If you explain your skills and your logic behind it, and you understand their skills and you talk about how you can help each other, you'll have a much better relationship with them. But I do want to end on a bit of fun. There are some developers that you just can't change, and you have to adapt to that. It's just some are so ingrained in the way that they want to work that it's probably not worth your energy trying to change them. You can complain to their leads, to managers as much as you like, but they're just not going to change. And that isn't a battle that I want to deal with. So I would just learn the best way to deal with them. And if that's throwing bugs over a wall to them, I'll do that. But the ones that do want to engage with me, the ones that want to help me and I want to help them, that's going to be ace. But also talking about the future of testers, that kind of developer will die. They won't have a position in any company because it's too disruptive. I'm not just picking on developers. Any role within software where the person is like that, they will not have a future in software because software is people focused. And you have to embrace the fact that people need to communicate. We need to share ideas. No one's trying to upset anyone else. We're all trying to do the same job. We're all trying to build quality software. And the sooner that everyone understands that, the better it will be for everyone. But yeah, I love developers, best friends.
Yeah, always. And hearing your explanation, Richard, and your response, your reply, I was thinking, my brain was thinking at a cartoon that I was watching when I was a kid. The name is Tom and Jerry. Yeah. So I guess Jerry is a developer and Tom is a tester. They are fighting. Jerry is trying to escape. Tom, the tester, is always catches the bug. But yeah, in the end, I guess we should collaborate in order to deliver the quality that we need for our project. So I guess I will never.
One thing about Tom and Jerry, they're best friends.
Yeah, exactly. So, in the end, they're best friends.
Exactly.
Okay. So next question from Patrick Bonner. Do you think there's a big role of AI/machine learning in testing in the future? For example, for recognizing anomalies in test output screenshots?
Yeah, as I said, I don't see a big future of AI and machine learning doing the actual testing as such, but to break down what I mean by that is I don't see AI and machine learning making pass and fail decisions, release, don't release. What I do see is I expect to see a huge amount of tooling that does what you described. So just navigates a website taking screenshots and tells me when the screenshot is different. It doesn't know that that's a bad thing. It just knows that it's different to last week. So it's just highlighting to me, hey, this is different. And then it's my job to then put that into context and go, yeah, that's fine. Or, whoa, well, that wasn't expected. So I expect to see a lot of tools doing this, monitoring logs, monitoring stats, taking screenshots, looking for JavaScript errors, looking for broken images, the things that are a bit noddy. I don't know if noddy translates very well, but the things that are a bit simple, low-hanging fruit. I expect to see a lot of tooling coming in that space to do those jobs for us, and I expect it to learn. So as I mentioned, test.ai, a fantastic company that Jason's building, but he's taught algorithms to understand what a shopping cart is. So they don't know your shopping cart, but they recognize a shopping cart. So they know that, oh, if it's a shopping cart, then you must be able to add stuff and take stuff away. You must be able to see the price. You must be able to see a summary. You must be able to see tax. So it's going to look at your shopping cart and tell you that you might not have those things, but you don't want those things. So you wouldn't want it passing and failing, but you would want it to go, hey, this looks like a shopping cart and you don't have tax displayed. Is there a problem here? So I think to dive a little bit deeper, I see a lot of this tooling doing the legwork for us. But the complex side of Oracle, so if anyone's not familiar with the term Oracle, it's kind of how we decide if there's a problem. I think we're going to struggle in that space for a while because there's so many variety of problems. However, doing the legwork, bringing that information to us, doing it much quicker than we can do it, absolutely. People are already building tools that do that, or from a traditional standpoint. So to have a centralized tool that's capable of doing that, and I expect to see them very contextual as well. You'll have bots that are fantastic at understanding websites. That's what they've been hard coded to do. They look for accessibility issues. They learn all the accessibility different traits themselves, but they don't necessarily know what's right or wrong because that's contextual, and it's very hard for the AI to put that into context. However, we can do that. We can do that really quickly. So, yeah, I do expect to see a huge amount of tools. Screenshot in space, there's already tools like Appy Tools doing this very well. There'll even be more tools in the future. Advanced web crawlers, looking at logs, I definitely see that. But as I mentioned, I would love to see some company make the job of skilled testing easier. Excuse me. So I would love to have, I always joke about this and no one's ever built it, but I would love to put myself in this testing universe, like virtual reality, put a headset on and find myself in Richard's test land with some little butler AI in the corner where I can talk to and be like, hey, this looks like a website. What heuristics do we have for a website? Hey, Richard, here's the ones you used 2 months ago and you managed to find this bug. Oh, great. Hey, log this and note this and take that. Take a screenshot. Go grab the logs for me. I want to see a tool like that in the future. I think that would be incredibly powerful. And And it doesn't really need machine learning to do that, but there would be certain points of it that machine learning would be very good at. For example, I expect to see a lot of tools that look at commits. You can learn a hell of a lot from commits. So I expect to see a lot of models that try to analyze commits and code history to point where there might be potential bugs. But the last thing I want to see in our industry is a whole raft of machine learning tools telling me that I can't release. I don't want that. I don't want a tool blocking my pipeline. I don't want to see that in the future, but I do want to see tools giving me information at a rapid pace and allowing me to make decisions, the human being the central aspect of that. And I think there's going to be really exciting developments in that space. But yeah, I don't see it taking over to the degree of being the one to make the decision. Not yet, anyway. But the pace it's moving at, who knows? Skynet's around the corner. Good question, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. What about testing certifications? Do you see them useful in Richard's world in the future? Do you see a future for them?
Not in their current form. So I'm anti-certification. I'm not a fan of certification. I don't like how it becomes a gatekeeper for people, and certain companies won't hire anyone if you don't have this £200 certificate. Like, I think it's a bit of a pyramid scheme. Like, it makes me just feel a bit icky. However, the reason why I don't see it having a future is they can't keep up. So the problem with certification is there's a board of people who have to come up with a curriculum and come up with exams, and that takes time. And by the time that's done, the industry's moved. So if they can find a way to keep up, then maybe. But also, I don't think that doing a multiple choice exam and having to only get 65%, or it was 40% when I did it, suddenly makes me a professional tester. I don't think they test the right thing. I think going forward, well, we're actually probably going to learn a lot from the developers side, not necessarily having GitHub projects, but we will be expected to have portfolios of our work, be able to show off the testing that we can do, and be able to have a testing narrative somewhere that someone can watch back and understand how you test. I think that's going to be more valuable than certification. It won't go away, though, because they have so much money and they're so big. So it will always be around, but they can't keep up. And I think community-based learning, and again, not just biased from MOT. Like, now I run MOT, but 8 years ago I was a tester who discovered it, and it accelerated my learning from here to here. The amount of information I was exposed to, the amount of people I could talk to and learn from, conferences I could attend, webinars I could listen to. I learned so much from those that I would never have got from certification. So I think they're going to have to change. They're going to have to be quicker. They're going to have to be cheaper. It's significantly too expensive. But I don't think they're going to succeed. It's becoming less relevant than it's ever been. And a piece of paper doesn't prove that I'm a skilled tester. Being able to show you my work and show off what I can do, I think, is far more valuable. If they can find ways to keep up, they might have a future. But I think they're becoming less relevant year on year because it's dated. It's dated because they can't keep up with the pace of the industry. Whereas, the people on this call, I could give you a new tool right now and you'd all go off, start learning it straight away. Perhaps one of you might write a blog post in an hour, and then 100 people read your blog post, and then they write their own blog post. And you can have people being able to learn within a matter of hours. The board of some certification hasn't even thought about that yet. So, yeah, I am biased. I do have obviously vested interest. I want MOT and community-based learning to succeed. But even if I take my MOT hat off, it doesn't make sense. It's a tick in a box. It doesn't mean anything. It's an expensive tick in the box. I think continuous-based learning is the only approach, and you can't do continuous-based €1,000 exams all year long. No one can afford that, and it doesn't make sense. Anyway, I'm rambling, but yeah, no, community-based learning all the way for me.
Thanks a lot. Richard, I had another question in the pipeline, but I was looking over the entire list of questions, and I saw a question that is kind of similar with what Brandusha mentioned. And from my point of view, what you mentioned covers also these questions, but I would like to address it just to see if there is something to complete. The question comes from Patrick. So he's asking, there aren't as many certifications for testers as there are for developers. Anyway, how as a tester can you best show your skills, the practical skills, not tooling focused?
Well, there's many ways and it's necessary. It's harder than others, but blogging and writing is probably one of the most impactful ways that you can do that. So, you know, maintaining a blog, you don't have to be sharing it. You don't have to be, you know, going on social media and sharing it across communities. You can just do it for your own learning. But I would say blogging is by far the highest one up there, but being active in a community. So answering other people's questions on, you know, things like the Ministry of Testing Forum, LinkedIn, being seen to be contributing, because what that also does is it forces you to practice. It forces you to reflect. One of the biggest things as any tester can do, any person interested in their career, to be honest, any career, is the act of reflecting. And the act of trying to write something down or record or teach other people forces you to reflect. And I think that eventually will make you stand out, being active and seen in the community. Outside of that, it becomes tough. You know, developers have GitHub projects, but if you take the principle of it, it's just sharing your work. So why not write your own reports? You know, why not download an app and test it and share the story, record it? You know, it doesn't have to be this polished thing, but it allows people a glimpse into how you think and how you work. And that's what developers get with, you know, GitHub projects. People go in and just quickly look at the way they write their code. We need to do something similar, and there isn't a GitHub project yet. I can give you a little insight. Sorry, I'd like to apologize to Centric, but a little mini sales pitch. MOT is working on solving this problem. It's a problem that we've identified in our industry, and we are actively working on something that will allow members of Ministry of Testing, or the wider Ministry of Testing, to show off their involvement in the community. And it's not to say that you're a bad tester if you're not involved in a community, but it's very hard for you to show off that you're actively learning and doing things if you don't have a place to do that. So, you know, you can tell me you've read 100 blogs, but how are you going to prove it to me? If you are involved in some sort of community platform that recorded and you're able to enter stuff and see things and write reviews, that kind of stuff is visible. And I think that's the problem that your question's addressing, is how do you make it visible? It's not that people don't do it. You have to make it visible. You know, I had a post on LinkedIn last week about skills. People writing their skills as Selenium, and JUnit, and Jira. They're not skills. That's a list of tools. That is not skills. Skills is showing off, being able to do something, being able to use a tool, or being able to solve a complex problem, being able to take ideas and turn them into test ideas, being able to debug a website, you know, and actually show someone how to do that. So yeah, people don't like it because people are scared to share, but blogs, written form, keep a journal, just keep evidence. That's the key word, I would say, evidence. Keep evidence of what you can do, and not just, you know, high level words. Keep detailed, you know, testing journeys. You know, do things for fun. Download an app and test it, record it, write it down, blog about your learnings. And I would say it's a lot easier than people think. When I started blogging, I used to blog my solutions. So everyone's been there, right? You've got a problem with Selenium, let's say, and you Google the first blog, you click on the first link, that doesn't answer your question, but gives you a little bit of information. You click on the second link, you get a little bit more, the third link, and by the 20th link, you've solved it. So I used to blog that so that the next person only had to open one. page to get what they were looking for. And that would obviously last for a while until they needed to open 20 pages. But yeah, you need to find a way. We're working on it, but outside of that, blog, do YouTube videos, I don't know, TikToks, blog stuff. Also teach people if you can. So try and teach people inside your company, do things at lunch times, do classes in the evenings. I know there's a few people, I think Ilian helps out at a local university or college. I'm not entirely sure which it was. But yeah, be active, but also have evidence. I don't know if that helps. It's a long answer, but I hope it helps. Patrick.
Thank you, Richard. We have a very interesting question from Andrei. He is a learner and he wants to find out if you know a list of tools that he could learn. And these tools, I know maybe the tools can be useful in his project for speed up the testing activities. Do you have, recommendation for him?
I don't. I would need to know far more about your context, Andre. What domain are you in? Is it web? Is it mobile? I'd need to be a bit more insight into your project. I can give you some high-level ideas. If it's web, Chrome developer tools are an absolute essential. You can learn so much from, well, not just Chrome, but Firefox, any of the dev tools, if you're in a web domain. If you're also in a web context, things like proxies, so things like Charles Proxy and Fiddler, incredibly powerful tools that allow you to see and do some incredible test ideas. If you're in the mobile space, Android Debugger Bridge is essential to speed you up. And then obviously, if you're going into the automation side of things, Selenium's obviously still very popular. Things like Cypress, Test Cafe. There's hundreds of these tools now. But I would say encourage you to think about your problem. And then again, I'm biased, but community. Once you know what your problem is, it's very easy to ask the question to get help. If your question was, hey, I'm having a hard time debugging the website when it loads incorrectly, I can answer that question. I can, give you insight. So practice framing your questions and your problems, and popular tools, as I said, Postman, Charles, DevTools, Selenium, Cypress, API-based tooling. If you really want to be hip and trendy, playing around in things like React. React is very popular. So like React testing library is a very powerful thing to learn, but you need a level of JavaScript coding knowledge to deal with those tools. Things like Chrome extensions, there's lots of really powerful tools in there. Things like bug magnets, spoofing tools, things that can clear your cache quickly. Excel is probably the most popular testing tool as well. Everyone loves Excel, especially the UK government. But yeah, there is no fixed list of tools, and this is what I mentioned in one of my talk. You need to be tool aware. So I would say to you, instead of learning specific tools, set up things that give you information about tools. So subscribe to newsletters and create a Twitter. There's so much testing talk on Twitter. You don't have to tweet on Twitter. You can just follow people. You just stalk people and you get information. So, I follow things like Chrome developer tools, and I follow a lot of those kind of, things like the IDEs. I follow all them because they tweet their updates and I get to learn that way. So the tools change regularly. Set up yourself an information radiator, as I call them, that exposes you to new tools, and then make sure you give yourself time to learn them and play with them, because that's the best way to learn them, is to interact with them, try and use them and see what you can learn. But there is no list, I'm afraid. I can't give you a fixed list. There's just too many.
So you need to learn like everything just to be 100% sure.
No, you don't. I know you put you said that in jest, but you need to be able to break your problem down, and then you need to be able to find tools quickly. And the best way to do that is to know what you're searching for and to take advantage of community and networks, because the tools change all the time. And there's some really cool tools that I imagine I don't know about.
but someone else will. So the more that you can ask other people, the easier it will be. But you need to help people by framing your problem. Otherwise, you're just going to get a list of tools. Nah, it's useful, but it's not going to really help.
True. Thanks a lot for your response. Next, Richard, we have like around six. Still, we have 6 questions. Do you think we can?
Yeah, sure. It's good progress,
yeah.
That.
And this is the good news, and the bad news is that we have. It's not a bad, actually. It's a good news, still a good news. But we have in the waiting list another, I guess, around 12 questions. And I was thinking maybe we can, I don't know, maybe we can send you an email with the list of questions, and maybe you can reply, or if this is okay with you, because I don't think we can handle all the questions that we have at this point, because this will make, I don't know, around 18 questions.
What I would like to do, if it's possible, because it's kind of good for everyone, if you send me the questions, I'll answer them on the Ministry of Testing forum, because that way the whole community can see the answers and learn from them. I think that's probably, and it's a better use of my time that more people get their answers as well. So yeah, if you send me the questions, I'll answer them, and I'll send you the links to the answers on the forum, if that's okay.
Yep, that's okay. Thanks a lot for this. Now, hopefully, we won't get another 20 questions, because it's been mentioned Ministry of Testing, and now everyone wants to see the. But thanks a lot for letting us know. So let's continue with what we have in the pipeline. The next question, it's a very interesting question from my point of view. Richard, what do you think about forcing testers to become coders in order to promote in their careers?
Specifically around being promoted, it depends on your context of that job. So, if coding in that role provides value, then obviously you would want to learn. You would need, there's a justification for learning it. So, there's being promoted because you can code into a job that doesn't involve writing code is absolutely moronic. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. But if you're being promoted into a job that requires coding, then obviously that makes a lot of sense. Again, without knowing that job, it's what jobs are interesting to you and what jobs does that company offer. As I said, being technical and being tool aware is very, very different than writing code. And you can provide a lot of value by having the thinking side of it, but using tools that don't require code. Like, they're not bad tools. That's why so many different tools exist, because they solve very different problems. So I think if a job was telling me that I had to learn to code to get promoted, that's probably not a place I want to work in, if I'm being honest. I want people to promote me because, of the skills that I do have, or the skills that I can learn. And if I love the job and learning to code means I get to stay at that job, then obviously I would do that. Then they also have to support me in doing that. They can't just tell me to learn to code. They have to support me. They have to give me time to do that. They have to invest in me, because it's not a simple thing. Learning to code, like, people say it so flippantly, I just learn to code. It's not. It's a very difficult problem. So yeah, I would not be. I wouldn't. It depends on you. If it's something you want to do, then obviously push back and say, look, I'm willing to do it if you support and help me. Coding isn't for everyone, though. And as I mentioned, there is always going to be jobs in Vin software that don't require code, where you can add a lot of value. They may be called tester, they may be called something completely different, and they may be called boss, but there will be jobs that don't require coding. So I think it's down to you and what you enjoy and what you like. But if they're insisting that you do it to get promoted, or that's what you believe, talk to them and find out if it's actually the case, because it might not be. It just might be lazy job descriptions, when actually they mean something completely different, and they've written down code when actually they meant the ability to learn quickly and do technical problems and solve complex problems. and be able to learn rapidly. But instead, they wrote the word code. So talk to them and ask them.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, it's not just about the code. It's more than that.
Yeah.
We have another interesting question coming from Adrian. This time is related to distributed teams. How we can improve the collaboration and communication in a distributed team? Should we have a clear testing team? Should we, I know, use tools or something that can improve the way we work together?
I think the first thing to do is, to talk to people, find out what they want to know and what information they want from you before you start throwing in a load of tools to enable that. So, have conversations and be like, well, what pieces of information are useful for you to know? And then that will be useful to start with. In terms of collaboration and actively working together, then obviously, yes, certain tools make it easy. So, if you're stay on the topic of coding, if you're pair programming with someone remotely, obviously there's tools that allow you to use your own keyboard and, you can all type at once and you can all move the mouse at once. That makes things easier. In the training we did today, we used a tool called Miro, which is basically a virtual whiteboard, which again means everyone can contribute at the same time. So I would always go back to the problems before tools. What collaboration problems are you having? And then find the appropriate tooling for it. Because again, there's so many tools that promise to do so many things. But if you don't know what your actual collaboration problem is, then that doesn't help. What I would say is there needs to be regular discussions about it. Like Slack became incredibly popular, in a very short period of time, but now so many people hate Slack. They can't think of anything worse. Now we're all, spending our days on Zoom calls that, in the future when someone says, let's have a Zoom call, you're going to be like, hell no, let's go to the office and sit in a room and have cake while we work with each other, once we're allowed to do that. So it depends what you're trying to collaborate, who you're trying to collaborate, and the tooling has to be tailored for the people. Certain tools work best for certain people. And that's all I can say, really. You just need to find things that work for you and spot why collaboration isn't working, because there's a billion ways why it isn't working. And to be honest, the highest one is probably tooling. I don't like writing a lot. So, if I'm told that most of my collaborating has to be with Slack and has to be written in a tool like TFS or Jira, you're never going to get the full story from me. If I can have a 5-minute call with you, you will get, if I can have a 5-minute call with you and record it and then attach that to TFS and Jira, you're going to get a lot more information out of me, because I don't like typing. I find typing difficult. I find getting the words out difficult. So it takes me longer. Whereas a quick conversation, I can collaborate with you more easily. However, some people hate collaborating on calls. So then you do different tooling for that person. But also finding the different types of collaboration. So there's a huge emphasis at the moment on real-time collaboration. So you're all expected just to be able to turn a switch on, and suddenly we can all start writing documents and editing documents. I can't do that. I need a bit of time to get my head out of certain activities into the next activity. So instead, if I was given a tool that allowed me to collaborate at my own pace, that's going to be more valuable to me. Again, focus on coding, for example. Even, let's go back to test cases. You can't just sit down and come up with test ideas. I have to put myself in the right frame. I have to set myself. I might have to get a few cheat sheets open. I might have to get certain, things out to get myself set. So again, understanding how different people's needs to make sure that they're in their maximum collaborative mode, and then add tooling to that, you should succeed. But forcing people to collaborate in a certain way is never going to work. It's just, I know sometimes the limitations on tools, but you need to really tailor it to the people. People are the most important. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, also an interesting one. So, test-driven development and shift left will increase the coding skills for a tester, or will increase the testing skills for sorry, I need to repeat it. So test-driven development and shift left will increase the coding skills for a tester, or will increase the testing skills for a developer?
Both.
Okay, that was quick.
Like, you know, to dig a little bit deeper, like obviously it will improve both, and that's what you want. But like, neither of you will go to the next level. So, you know, if you shift left, as the phrase is called, you're sharing. You know, you're basically teaching each other. So while yes, you shift left and you might do more TDD, right, and that's going to improve your coding skills and, let's say, your end unit skills to take a specific tool, and then the developer is going to learn how to do different tests and how to come up with different test ideas. But that's, you're both going to reach a certain level, but then the developer is probably going to go even higher up in understanding the internals of end unit and how that works. The tester's probably going to go to the next level and coming up with the ideas. So yes, it's more of getting this solid foundation of everyone having enough knowledge in each space, but the actual expertise, not everyone can learn everything, and not everyone can learn everything to a high enough level, because there's not enough space in your brain. You just simply can't keep it all in there. So there's always going to be expertise. There's a guy called Alan Page who talks about generalist specialist. So, you know, everyone has to become a generalist, but you also specialize in a certain area. And I think that is kind of true, as I mentioned, for some of those core skills earlier. The collaboration, the communication, the facilitation, they're going to be core for anyone working in software. And but your specific thing, there's always going to be limits, because not everyone can learn everything. And you're going to get exposure to a different diverse set of ideas, which is great. So, you know, shifting left is one way, but having different roles and different people involved in different aspects of building software is only going to have a positive impact, in my opinion. But there is limits to what specialist everyone can do. If you push a developer to become, Rosie Graham says this better than anyone, I believe. She says if you take a good tester and force them to program, you're going to lose a good tester and gain a bad programmer. So there's elements, there's different levels to that. If someone's incredible at testing and you push them to code, some aspects of their good testing are going to go, because there's not enough space. You can't store it all. It's simply not possible. So we do need specialists, but there is a level that everyone is going to have to get to. And yes, developers testing, yes, some aspect of coding or reading code or technical skills, people are going to need them, without a doubt.
Thank you, Richard. But what about testing metrics? Do we need them? Do you see an evolution for them?
Metrics is a huge topic. I would say the thing that the heuristic that I've always led by when it comes to metrics and things like KPIs is they are useless without the story that goes with them. So if you see a metric, you know, that's 99 out of 100, it doesn't mean anything without the story that goes with it. So I think certain metrics are very useful. Some I think are damaging. You know, for example, defect detection rate. It's an absolutely appalling metric because it sets the wrong behavior. You're now judged to be bad because you haven't found as many bugs. Yeah, but I found that all this information that's really important. Yes, it's not a bug. So I'm not a bad tester because I didn't find any bugs. There isn't any to find maybe, and yeah, I'm being punished for that. So there's certain metrics that don't helpful. Developers have their own with lines of code. You know, why have you only committed 20 lines of code, Richard? Well, because I was able to do it in 20 lines of code. I solved the problem. Oh yeah, but you should write more code. What? The developers tell me I should write less code. So some metrics don't help, but there is some useful ones. Some of the ones I am a fan of, and I see an evolution of, is things like mean time to recovery. I think that's a very important metric at the moment. So when you do have production issues, how long does it take you as a team to fix it? Because everyone has to be involved in that. You have to find the problem, which is obviously a high investigation tester side of things. Once you've found the problem needs fixing. You then got to deploy the fix, you've got to communicate the fix, and you've got to see if it's actually fixed. So, you know, mean time to recovery, I think, is useful. Mean time to release is one that a lot of people use. So how long does it go from the BA or the product owner or the customer having an idea to something actually being in production? It doesn't have to be the finished idea, but how long does it take to go from idea to production? I think that's a very useful metric. Outside of that, yes, they are going to change, but they should also be very contextual. I think that's the important with KPIs. And our industry tried to go down the route of the same for everyone. It doesn't work. How can you have test cases run as a metric if you don't have test cases? It doesn't make sense. So yeah, they are important, but the narrative is even more important. Management need quick information, but management also need different people need different information. So KPIs are useful for the right person. So for example, right, let's say test case ran is a good metric, right? We're going to use it. So I've ran 20 test cases today. To my lead, they know what that means. They're like, oh, fantastic, Richard, good day. Right? If you then say that to a management and you say, oh, we've run 20 test cases today, they're going to be like, what? 20 what? What's a test case? They're not interested in that. You go to the CEO at the very top of the company, hey, I ran 10 test cases today. What? That doesn't mean anything to them. So your KPIs need to be tailored. Your test manager probably wants to maybe hear that, but then the delivery manager is probably interested to know if there's any issues at the moment. Is there any impediments? Whereas the next person up's interested to know, are we making money? You know, are we actually selling this product? Is it working? So KPIs metrics will always evolve. There is some that work, there is some that don't, but they have to be contextual to your team. And I would finally say they have to be related to the problem. You're always trying to solve a problem. So how do you know you've solved the problem? That's where metrics are really powerful. So you spot an issue, you try and do something, you have to then be able to know if it's worked. Think of an example of web design. Our website is slow. Right, well, what's slow? Well, it takes 5 seconds to load. Okay, that's bad. So now our KPI is less than 5 seconds. So when we release a feature, we now have a measurable thing to see if we've improved or met what we were trying to do. That's what KPIs should be about, helping you see if you're on track. And if they're doing the opposite, and if they're being used as a whip, that's a no-no for me. They shouldn't be used as a tool to critique people. They should be used as a tool to start a conversation. That's the power of KPIs, highlighting things to have a conversation, to listen to the story. That's when they become into their own. So I expect them to evolve in that way. A lot more conversation based on them. And my partner bought me a drink because my voice is starting to go.
Okay, thanks a lot. Richard, I would like to mention that we have published a link where all the attendees can send us their feedback about this event. Please take a few minutes and let us know what you liked and what we can improve on the next event. And I would like to move on with basically this is the last question, and it's a funny one and also a personal one, Richard.
Cool.
So let's see, just a second, because I would like to check who is asking this. Michael is asking us, or is asking you, Richard, do you have a LinkedIn profile? There are multiple Richard Bradshaws. Which one is yours? And also Michael is adding another question. It's continuing basically the question and asks, does Richard have an itinerary of upcoming talks? Is there a link?
I don't, because I actually don't have any upcoming talks. However, all my training and things get published on. I hope you can still see my browser.
Yep.
They get published on automationandtesting.com. So if you go to there, you'll see a tab called public training. So my upcoming training gets published here. And then again, not trying to specifically promote MOT, but most of the training that I do is always through Ministry of Testing. So I know that I can't type. Can't type when people watch you. Oh, it's not there for some reason. But yeah, I have some workshops upcoming with Ministry of Testing. But yeah, usually Twitter is where I share most of my things. So the same again on Twitter. It's underneath Friendly Tester. So I tweet a lot. But yeah, that's where I usually share most of my things. So yeah, if you want to know where I'm talking, what I'm doing, Twitter and LinkedIn. And I try to keep this page up to date, but I fail most of the time. So yeah, social media is probably best. And there should definitely not be multiple Richard Bradshaw. That's outrageous. I'm going to make sure all these people get taken care of, so that there's only one Richard Bradshaw. Cool.
Okay. Richard, basically these are all the questions that we had in the pipeline for you tonight. I will send the rest of them to your email, and hopefully when you have time you can reply to the rest of them. And I would like to thank you for all your patience and all the information that you have shared with us tonight. Hopefully, I don't know, everyone got some answers, and everyone felt or is feeling that, or what I'm feeling, that testing is on a good path, and we have a lot of things to learn still, and there is place to enrich our knowledge and to shape up our career.
Yeah, absolutely. Testing isn't going away. It's always going to be around. Software's becoming more and more important. I would say to all of you, focus on yourself. Make sure you're always learning. Make sure your companies are supporting you if you're learning, such as Centric do. Running things like this webinar and this mini conference. Expose yourself to as much information as you can, because that's what you're going to need. Our industry is going to move at an incredible pace. So the quicker that you can learn and expose yourself to things, the better. And I would also love to encourage you to share, to blog, to tweet, to post on LinkedIn, to do talks. I'm just the same as everyone. I just happen to like talking, but every single one of you can share in a way that works for you. So the more you share, the more you learn, the more you reflect. And every single one of you has something to share. You're all doing incredible work. So I wish you all the best in your careers, and I hope to see you around LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever it may be, or hopefully I get to come to Yash one day when it's safe to fly and things, and hopefully I'll meet a lot of you there if that's where you're based. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. And everyone, have a great evening. Richard, hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.